The massive alien ships appeared in Earth's orbit like dark storm clouds blocking out the stars. Their hulls gleamed with perfect silver metal that seemed to drink in the light from Sol. Each vessel stretched longer than 3 city blocks, bristling. With weapon arrays that could turn planets into glass, Admiral Yun-Ho stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching the alien fleet through the main viewing screen. His weathered hands gripped the rail as he counted the enemy ships. 50 vessels in the diplomatic escort alone. The message was clear: submit or die. The Perseverance looked like a joke next to the alien fleet. Her hull was a patchwork of different metals welded together. Some sections were bright steel, others dull gray, and a few patches were actually rusted. Pipes and cables ran along the outside of the ship where they should have been hidden inside. The weapon mounts looked like they had been torn from other ships and bolted on wherever they would fit. Captain Heijin walked onto the bridge, his uniform neat despite the chaos around them. The crew worked frantically at their stations, preparing for the meeting that would decide Earth's fate. Everyone knew what the aliens wanted. Everyone knew what would happen if they said no. "They're hailing us," reported Lieutenant So-Young from her communication station. Her voice was steady, but Yun-Ho could see the fear in her eyes. "They want to board for the negotiations. Let them come," Yun-Ho said. "Captain Heijin, you'll represent Earth. Remember what we discussed." Heijin nodded. "Act weak, act scared. Let them think we're exactly what we appear to be." The docking bay filled with the sound of heavy footsteps as the alien delegation arrived. High Commander Veltharus led them, standing nearly 8 feet tall with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His soldiers carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their armor was smooth and perfect. Without a single scratch or dent, Veltharus looked around the docking bay with obvious disgust. The walls were covered in exposed pipes and jury-rigged systems. Tools hung from hooks welded directly to the bulkheads. Everything looked like it might fall apart at any moment. "This is your finest warship?" Veltharus asked, his voice carrying, through a translation device, "this collection of scrap metal and spare parts?" "It's what we have," Heijin replied, keeping his voice humble. "We built her from salvaged materials. She's not much to look at, but she flies." One of the alien officers actually laughed. The sound was harsh and grating. "Flies? This wreck looks like it would fall apart if you turned too quickly." Veltharus walked over to a wall panel and ran one of his 4 hands along the surface. The metal was scarred and pitted, held together with welding that looked like it had been done by an amateur. "How do you humans expect to defend yourselves with such primitive technology?" "We don't," Heijin said quietly. "We know we can't fight the Kethmoran Empire. That's why we're willing to negotiate." The lie came easily. Heijin had practiced it many times. Around him, the crew played their parts perfectly. They looked nervous and frightened. They jumped whenever the aliens moved suddenly. They acted exactly like a primitive species facing a superior force. Veltharus seemed pleased by their fear. "Wise, your species shows promise despite your technological limitations. The Empire has use for workers who know their place." They moved to the conference room where Admiral Yun-Ho waited with the other human representatives. The room was just as ramshackle as the rest of the ship. The table was made from different pieces of metal welded together. The chairs didn't match. The lighting flickered occasionally. "Admiral," Veltharus said with mock respect, "I bring greetings from the Kethmoran Empire. We come to offer you a choice." Yun-Ho gestured to the seats around the table. "Please sit. We're honored by your presence." As the negotiations began, Veltharus laid out the Empire's demands. Earth would surrender control of all colonies beyond the solar system. Human ships would be limited to cargo and transport duties. Earth would provide workers and raw materials to the Empire. In return, they would be allowed to exist. "The terms are generous," Veltharus said. "Many species are simply eliminated when they encounter the Empire. We offer you the chance to serve. What if we refuse?" asked General Taehyun, Earth's military commander. Veltharus smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then we demonstrate why resistance is futile." He activated a holographic display showing the Empire's warfleet. Thousands of ships filled the Projection. This is merely a small portion of our forces. We have destroyed civilizations that possess technology far superior to yours. The humans exchanged worried glances. Yun-Ho rubbed his forehead as if fighting a headache. How long do we have to decide? 48 hours, Valtherus said. After that, we will assume you have chosen death over service. As the aliens prepared to leave, one of their officers stopped to examine a control panel that had been left open. Inside, the circuits looked like they had been hand-wired by someone who barely understood electronics. Loose connections were held together with tape. Some components looked like they had been scavenged from children's toys. How does this even function? The officer asked in amazement. Chief Engineer B.O. Ram looked embarrassed. We make do with what we can find. Sometimes we have to get creative. The officer shook his head in disbelief. Incredible that you achieved spaceflight with such crude methods. After the aliens left, the human delegation sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Yun-Ho spoke. They bought it completely. They think we're helpless primitives playing with scrap metal. Heijin smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Did you see how they looked at our equipment? They can't imagine anyone building functional technology from salvaged parts. Their arrogance is perfect, added B.O. Ram. They see what they expect to see. A weak species that got lucky enough to reach the stars? Lieutenant So Young pulled out a small device and activated it. Their ships are transmitting constantly. I'm picking up their internal communications. They're already planning victory. Celebrations? The device translated the alien chatter. Easy conquest, one voice said. These humans will fold without a fight. Another added, their ship looks like it was built by children playing with junk. General Taehyun stood and walked to the viewing port. Outside, the alien fleet hung in space like a collection of deadly jewels. 48 hours, he said. Think that's enough time to prepare? More than enough, Yun-Ho replied. Signal the fleet. Tell them it's time to stop pretending. As the alien delegation returned to their ships, they transmitted their report to the Empire. The humans were weak. Their technology was primitive. Conquest would be simple. The great Kethmoran Empire would add another species to its collection of servants. They had no idea that the ramshackle ship they had just visited was humanity's most advanced warship. They couldn't imagine that the crude-looking systems they had mocked were actually sophisticated technology designed to appear primitive. The Perseverance drifted in space, looking like a collection of junk held together with hope and prayer. Her crew prepared for what was coming. In 48 hours, the aliens would learn that appearances could be very deceiving. The countdown to war had begun. The alien fleet moved away from Earth like a pack of predators confident in their strength. Their ships formed a perfect formation, each vessel maintaining precise distance from the others. They would wait at the edge of the solar system for humanity's surrender aboard the Perseverance. The mood changed the moment the aliens were gone. The nervous crew members straightened their shoulders. The frightened expressions disappeared. Captain Heijin walked to the center of the bridge and pressed a hidden panel. The ship's lighting changed from the dim, flickering glow the aliens had seen to bright, steady illumination. Sections of the walls slid away to reveal clean, modern control stations. The ramshackle appearance was just a shell hiding something far more advanced. Stand down from deception protocol, Heijin announced. Begin combat preparations. Chief Engineer B.O. Ram smiled as she watched her crew shed their disguises. The tool belts and dirty coveralls disappeared, replaced by sleek uniforms made from advanced materials. The jury-rigged equipment they had shown the aliens was wheeled away to storage. Commander Jamin, report to engineering, B.O. Ram called, over the ship's communication system. It's time to show you what this ship can really do. Jamin arrived minutes later, still amazed by the transformation taking place throughout the ship. Hull panels that had looked rusted and patched were sliding apart to reveal weapon systems underneath. The mismatched external plating was rotating and rearranging itself into new configurations. This is incredible, Jamin said as he watched the changes. How long have you been planning this? 15 years, Bahram replied. running her hands over a control panel that had appeared from what looked like a solid wall. "Ever since we first detected their scout ships approaching our territory." She led him deeper into the ship, past areas the aliens had never seen. Here, the true nature of the Perseverance became clear. The corridors were lined with quantum processors that could calculate faster than any alien computer. The walls themselves were made from adaptive materials that could reconfigure based on combat needs. Each section of mismatched hull plating serves a specific purpose, Bahram explained as they walked. The rusted panels contain sensor arrays that the alien scanners can't detect. The welded joints hide power conduits that can be rerouted instantly if we take damage. They reached the main engineering section, where the ship's true heart was revealed. What the aliens had assumed was a primitive reactor was actually a quantum fusion core that could power a small city. The crude-looking pipes and cables were sophisticated energy distribution systems disguised to look ancient. "The entire ship is designed around one principle," Bahram continued. "Make the enemy underestimate us while we study everything about them." Commander Jamin shook his head in wonder. "But how did you make it look so convincing?" "Those alien officers examined our systems closely." "That's the beauty of it," Bahram said, activating a holographic display. "Every primitive system they saw was real. It just wasn't the only system. Watch this." She pressed a control, and the display showed the electrical panel the alien officer had examined. The crude wiring and hand-soldered connections were there, exactly as they had appeared. But now the display zoomed out to show the rest of the circuit. The primitive panel was just the visible tip of a sophisticated network hidden behind the walls. "We call it layered deception," Bahram explained. "The surface layer is exactly what it appears to be, functional but primitive technology. Underneath, we have systems that are decades ahead of anything the aliens possess." Meanwhile, on the bridge, Lieutenant So Young was monitoring alien communications with equipment that hadn't existed when the diplomats visited. The listening arrays hidden in the ship's hull were picking up transmissions from across the Kethmoran fleet. "They're already planning the occupation," she reported to Admiral Yun-Ho. "They're discussing which human cities would make the best administrative centers. What about their military preparations?" Yun-Ho asked. "Minimal," So Young replied with a slight smile. "They're not even maintaining full alert status. Their commander has ordered the fleet to conserve power for the journey to the next star system after they finish here." Admiral Yun-Ho walked to the navigation station, where Lieutenant Na Young was coordinating with hidden elements throughout the solar system. The aliens thought they were facing a single primitive warship and some orbital platforms. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for over a decade. "Status report on the Ghost Fleet," Yun-Ho requested. "All ships are in position and maintaining their disguises," Na Young replied. "The mining vessel Determination is positioned near the asteroid belt. The alien sensors show her as a simple or processor." She switched to another display. "The cargo hauler Resilience is in the outer system, appearing to transport supplies to the colonies. And the research ship Innovation is hiding among the debris of the old Luna construction yards." Yun-Ho nodded with satisfaction. Each of these ships looked like exactly what they claimed to be. The Determination even had a cargo hold full of processed minerals. The Resilience was actually carrying supplies. The Innovation conducted real scientific research when not needed for military operations, but hidden beneath their civilian purposes were weapon systems that would make the aliens' admirals wake up screaming. The mining ships or processors could be converted to mass drivers in minutes. The cargo haulers' transport bays could deploy fighter squadrons. The research vessel's laboratory equipment included experimental weapons that bent the laws of physics. "What about the orbital platforms?" Yun-Ho asked. Engineer Dalsu looked up from his station. "Fortress Omega is still playing the part of a mining station. The alien sensors show asteroid processing equipment and/or storage tanks. They have no idea that the storage tanks are actually weapon magazines. The deception extended beyond just the ships and stations. For 15 years, Humanity had been deliberately presenting a false image to any alien scouts that entered their territory. Every transmission they allowed to be intercepted painted humans as primitive but resourceful. Every piece of technology they left where spies could find it was carefully designed to look crude but functional. The aliens think they understand. U.S. completely, Captain Heijin said as he reviewed the intelligence reports. They see a species that barely achieved spaceflight using salvage technology and pure determination. That's exactly what we want them to see, replied Commander Jae-min. They can't imagine that anyone would deliberately appear weaker than they really are. Chief Engineer Bioram activated another hidden system and the ship's true sensor array came online. The Perseverance could now detect individual aliens moving around inside their ships. She could track their power distribution, monitor their communications, and analyze their weapon systems in real time. They're using standard Kethmoran battle doctrine, she reported. Overwhelming firepower supported by energy shields and superior maneuverability. It's effective against most species they encounter, but not against us, Admiral Yunho said quietly. Because we're not most species. The crew of the Perseverance continued their preparations as the countdown continued. In less than 40 hours, the aliens would return expecting humanity's surrender. Instead, they would face an enemy that had spent 15 years studying their tactics, analyzing their technology, and preparing the perfect trap. Outside the ship, the disguised hull panels continued their slow transformation. Weapon ports opened in sections that had looked like random patches of metal. Sensor arrays extended from areas that had appeared to be structural damage. The ship was becoming what she had always been beneath the surface, a weapon designed specifically to destroy the Kethmoran Empire. The deception was perfect. The aliens were confident. The trap was set. Soon the galaxy would learn why humanity had survived and thrived in a universe full of hostile species. They would discover that appearing weak while growing strong was an art form humans had perfected. Over centuries of warfare against each other, the Perseverance drifted through space, still looking like a collection of junk. But now she was junk with teeth. The Kethmoran war fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic locusts. 200 ships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect small asteroids. Admiral Kordag stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Worldbreaker, watching Earth grow larger on his viewing screen. The primitive blue world hung in space like a ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. Soon it would belong to the Empire, and its people would serve their betters. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel, reported his communications. Officer, they're requesting more time to consider our terms. Kordag's mandibles clicked in amusement. Patch it through. Let's hear what these primitives have to say. Captain Heijin's image appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Perseverance looked even more ramshackle than before. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. Crew members ran back and forth carrying tools and spare parts. Admiral Kordag, Heijin said, his voice shaking slightly, we need more time. Our people are divided. Some want to fight, others want to surrender. We're trying to convince them that resistance would be suicide. How much time do you require? Kordag asked, though he had already decided the answer would be no. Just 12 more hours, Heijin pleaded. Please. If we can avoid bloodshed, isn't that better for everyone? Kordag cut the transmission without answering. Around him, his officers laughed at the humans' desperation. The primitives were already broken, begging for more time to accept the inevitable. Begin the approach, Kordag ordered. Deploy the fleet in attack formation. If they want to surrender, they can do it while watching our weapons charge. The alien fleet moved toward Earth like a tide of death. The lead ships were heavy cruisers, each one capable of reducing a city to ash with a single bombardment. Behind them came the destroyers and frigates, smaller but no less deadly. The Worldbreaker itself was a dreadnought that had broken the defenses of a dozen worlds. On Earth, General Taehyun watched the approaching fleet from the command center deep beneath the surface. Around him, his staff monitored every aspect of the coming battle. The displays showed not just the alien ships, but also the hidden human forces scattered throughout the solar system. "Status report on our disguised assets," he ordered. "All ships maintain their covers," reported his aide. "The Determination is still playing mining vessel. The aliens haven't even bothered to scan her properly. And the civilian evacuation? Complete. All non-essential personnel have been moved to the deep shelters. The orbital stations are operating on skeleton crews." General Taehyun nodded grimly. The preparations had taken months, but every human civilian was now protected deep underground or in heavily shielded facilities. When the shooting started, only military personnel would be at risk. Aboard the Perseverance, Admiral Yunho received the final intelligence reports. The alien fleet was exactly what their spies had predicted. Standard Kethmoran battle doctrine with no surprises or tactical innovations. They were confident in their technological superiority and weren't expecting any real resistance. "Signal all hidden units," he ordered. "Begin Phase 1 preparations." Throughout the solar system, ships that had appeared to be civilian vessels began subtle changes. The mining ship Determination started moving her or processors into new positions. To alien sensors, it looked like normal mining operations. In reality, she was preparing to convert those processors into magnetic mass drivers. The cargo hauler Resilience began what appeared to be a routine cargo inspection. Her crews opened the holds and moved containers around. The aliens watching through their telescopes saw nothing unusual. They didn't realize that the containers held fighter craft that could be deployed in minutes near the ruins of an old space station. The research vessel Innovation continued her scientific work. Her crews appeared to be studying cosmic radiation and taking mineral samples from nearby asteroids. The sophisticated equipment they used looked like standard research tools to anyone who didn't know better. "Time to contact," reported Lieutenant So Young from her station on the Perseverance. "Alien fleet will reach optimal firing position in 37 minutes. Captain Heijin activated the ship's internal communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. The enemy is approaching. In less than an hour, they'll discover that humanity is not as helpless as we appear. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Make them regret the day they decided to threaten Earth." The crew responded with quiet determination. They had trained for this moment for years. Every system on the ship had been tested and retested. Every crew member knew their role in the coming battle. Chief Engineer Bioram made her final checks on the ship's true capabilities. The quantum fusion reactor was running at optimal efficiency. The adaptive armor plating was ready to reconfigure based on incoming damage. The weapon systems were charged and waiting. "Defensive systems online," she reported. "All primary and secondary weapons ready. Stealth generators standing by." Commander Jamin reviewed the tactical situation one last time. The aliens were approaching in a standard battle formation designed to overwhelm a weaker opponent with superior firepower. It was exactly the formation that humanity's battle computers had been programmed to defeat. "They're not even trying to be creative," he observed. "Same tactics they've used for centuries. Why change something that always works?" replied Lieutenant Na Young from her position at the tactical station. "They've never faced an enemy that was deliberately hiding their true strength." The alien fleet continued its approach, confident and unstoppable. Admiral Kordag watched Earth grow larger on his screens and imagined the tribute that would flow from this new conquest. The Empire would be pleased with such an easy victory. "All ships prepare for planetary bombardment," he ordered. "Target the major population centers first. We want the survivors to understand the price of resistance." His weapons officers began selecting targets. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, the great cities of Earth appeared on their targeting computers. In minutes, they would be burning ruins, but the aliens had made a critical error. They assumed that the primitive humans would follow standard patterns of defense. They expected orbital platforms, fighter squadrons, and conventional warships. They prepared to face the kind of resistance they had encountered from dozens of other species. They had no idea that humanity had been studying them for 15 years. Every battle the Kethmoran Empire had fought was recorded in human databases. Every tactic they used had been analyzed and countered. Their own confidence would be their downfall. 15 minutes to weapons range, reported the alien communications. Officer, Admiral Kordag nodded with satisfaction. Signal the fleet, prepare to demonstrate why the Empire is supreme. On the Perseverance, Admiral Yun-Ho watched the countdown continue. Soon, the aliens would learn that humans had spent centuries fighting wars against each other. They had perfected the art of making enemies underestimate them. They had learned to turn apparent weakness into devastating strength. All stations. Report ready, Captain Heijin announced. We are prepared for battle. The trap was set. The aliens were walking into it with complete confidence. In a few minutes, the galaxy would witness something that had never happened before: the complete destruction of a Kethmoran battle fleet by an apparently inferior enemy. The storm was about to break, and humanity was ready to ride it to victory. The Kethmoran war fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic locusts. 200 ships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect small asteroids. Admiral Kordag stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Worldbreaker, watching Earth grow larger on his viewing screen. The primitive blue world hung in space like a ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. Soon it would belong to the Empire, and its people would serve their betters. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel, reported his communications. Officer, they're requesting more time to consider our terms. Kordag's mandibles clicked in amusement. Patch it through. Let's hear what these primitives have to say. Captain Heijin's image appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Perseverance looked even more ramshackle than before. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. Crew members ran back and forth carrying tools and spare parts. Admiral Kordag, Heijin said, his voice shaking slightly, we need more time. Our people are divided. Some want to fight, others want to surrender. We're trying to convince them that resistance would be suicide. How much time do you require? Kordag asked, though he had already decided the answer would be no. Just 12 more hours, Heijin pleaded. Please. If we can avoid bloodshed, isn't that better for everyone? Kordag cut the transmission without answering. Around him, his officers laughed at the humans' desperation. The primitives were already broken, begging for more time to accept the inevitable. Begin. The approach, Kordag ordered. Deploy the fleet in attack formation. If they want to surrender, they can do it while watching our weapons charge. The alien fleet moved toward Earth like a tide of death. The lead ships were heavy cruisers, each one capable of reducing a city to ash with a single bombardment. Behind them came the destroyers and frigates, smaller but no less deadly. The Worldbreaker itself was a dreadnought that had broken the defenses of a dozen worlds. On Earth, General Taehyun watched the approaching fleet from the command center deep beneath the surface. Around him, his staff monitored every aspect of the coming battle. The displays showed not just the alien ships, but also the hidden human forces scattered throughout the solar system. Status report on our disguised assets, he ordered. All ships. Maintain their covers, reported his aide. The Determination is still playing mining vessel. The aliens haven't even bothered to scan her properly. And the civilian evacuation? Complete. All non-essential personnel have been moved to the deep. Shelters. The orbital stations are operating on skeleton crews. General Taehyun nodded grimly. The preparations had taken months, but every human civilian was now protected deep underground or in heavily shielded facilities. When the shooting started, only military personnel would be at risk. Aboard the Perseverance, Admiral Yun-Ho received the final intelligence reports. The alien fleet was exactly what their spies had predicted. Standard Kethmoran battle doctrine with no surprises or tactical innovations. They were confident in their technological superiority and weren't expecting any real resistance. Signal all hidden units, he ordered. Begin Phase 1 preparations. Throughout the solar system, ships that had appeared to be civilian vessels began subtle changes. The mining ship Determination started moving her or processors into new positions. To alien sensors, it looked like normal mining operations. In reality, she was preparing to convert those processors into magnetic mass drivers. The cargo hauler Resilience began what appeared to be a routine cargo inspection. Her crews opened the holds and moved containers around. The aliens watching through their telescopes saw nothing unusual. They didn't realize that the containers held fighter craft that could be deployed in minutes near the ruins of an old space station. The research vessel Innovation continued her scientific work. Her crews appeared to be studying cosmic radiation and taking mineral samples from nearby asteroids. The sophisticated equipment they used looked like standard research tools to anyone who didn't know better. Time to contact, reported Lieutenant So Young from her station on the Perseverance. Alien fleet will reach optimal firing position in 37 minutes. Captain Heijin activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. The enemy is approaching. In less than an hour, they'll discover that humanity is not as helpless as we appear. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Make them regret the day they decided to threaten Earth. The crew responded with quiet determination. They had trained for this moment for years. Every system on the ship had been tested and retested. Every crew member knew their role in the coming battle. Chief Engineer Bioram made her final checks on the ship's true capabilities. A quantum fusion reactor was running at optimal efficiency. The adaptive armor plating was ready to reconfigure based on incoming damage. The weapon systems were charged and waiting. Defensive systems online, she reported. All primary and secondary weapons ready. Stealth generators standing by. Commander Jae-min reviewed the tactical situation one last time. The aliens were approaching in a standard battle formation designed to overwhelm a weaker opponent with superior firepower. It was exactly the formation that humanity's battle computers had been programmed to defeat. They're not even trying to be creative, he observed. Same tactics they've used for centuries. Why change something that always works? Replied Lieutenant Na Young from her position at the tactical station. They've never faced an enemy that was deliberately hiding their true strength. The alien fleet continued its approach, confident and unstoppable. Admiral Kordag watched Earth grow larger on his screens and imagined the tribute that would flow from this new conquest. The Empire would be pleased with such an easy victory. All ships prepare for planetary bombardment, he ordered. Target the major population centers first. We want the survivors to understand the price of resistance. His weapons officers began selecting targets. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, the great cities of Earth appeared on their targeting computers. In minutes, they would be burning ruins, but the aliens had made a critical error. They assumed that the primitive humans would follow standard patterns of defense. They expected orbital platforms, fighter squadrons, and conventional warships. They prepared to face the kind of resistance they had encountered from dozens of other species. They had no idea that humanity had been studying them for 15 years. Every battle the Kethmoran Empire had fought was recorded in human databases. Every tactic they used had been analyzed and countered. Their own confidence would be their downfall. 15 minutes to weapons range, reported the alien communications. Officer, Admiral Kordag nodded with satisfaction. Signal the fleet, prepare to demonstrate why the Empire is supreme. On the Perseverance, Admiral Yun-ho watched the countdown continue. Soon, the aliens would learn that humans had spent centuries fighting wars against each other. They had perfected the art of making enemies underestimate them. They had learned to turn apparent weakness into devastating strength. All stations. Report ready, Captain Heijin announced. We are prepared for battle. The trap was set. The aliens were walking into it with complete confidence. In a few minutes, the galaxy would witness something that had never happened before: the complete destruction of a Kethmoran Battle fleet by an apparently inferior enemy. The storm was about to break, and humanity was ready to ride it to victory. With Admiral Kordag dead and his flagship crippled, command of the alien fleet fell to Captain Zethkal aboard the heavy cruiser Vengeance. The younger officer had never faced anything like this battle. The humans were fighting with weapons and tactics that defied everything he knew about warfare. "Status report on all ships," he ordered, trying to bring order to the chaos around him. 17 vessels destroyed or heavily damaged, his tactical officer reported. The enemy appears to be using multiple unknown weapon types. Our shields are ineffective against their kinetic weapons, and they have some form of advanced stealth technology. Zethkal studied the tactical display with growing horror. The human forces were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of spaceflight. Instead, they were systematically destroying the most powerful fleet in the Kethmoran Empire aboard the Perseverance. Chief Weapons Officer Dongwu was finally able to show what human ingenuity could accomplish when given unlimited resources. And 15 years to prepare. The ship's arsenal was unlike anything ever built by any species in known space. "Nanite swarm ready for deployment," he reported to Captain Heijin. "Target selection?" Heijin studied the alien fleet through the ship's advanced sensors. The enemy was trying to reform their battle line, but they were still confused and scattered. "Perfect conditions for the next phase of their attack. Deploy against the cluster of destroyers on the left flank," he ordered. "Let's see how their computers handle a logic virus." The Nanite swarm launched from hidden ports in the Perseverance's hull. To alien sensors, the microscopic machines looked like harmless debris from the battle. The swarm drifted toward the Kethmoran destroyers, appearing to be nothing more than dust and metal fragments. But when the nanites made contact with the alien ship's hulls, they began their real work. Each machine was smaller than a virus but contained sophisticated programming designed specifically to infiltrate Kethmoran computer systems. The nanites burrowed through the alien ship's armor like mechanical termites. They found power cables, data conduits, and control circuits. Within minutes, they had established connections to the destroyer's main computers. "What's happening to our systems?" demanded the captain of the destroyer Slaughter as his displays began showing impossible readings. "Navigation shows we're flying? Backward, weapons are targeting our own ships." His crew worked frantically to regain control, but the nanites were too sophisticated. They had been programmed by the same humans who had created the quantum computers aboard the Perseverance. The alien systems, advanced as they were, couldn't cope with such aggressive infiltration. "Engine control is completely compromised," reported the ship's engineer. "The reactor is fluctuating. We're losing power to life support." One by one, the infected destroyers began to malfunction. Their weapons fired randomly, sometimes hitting other alien ships. Their engines shut down or accelerated without commands. Their life support systems failed, leaving crews gasping in the darkness. But the nanites were just one example of humanity's technological advantage. Chief Engineer Bioram had spent years developing systems that could adapt to any battlefield condition. The Perseverance's hull plating was more than just disguised armor. It was a living system that could reconfigure itself in real time. "Enemy. Plasma fire incoming," reported Lieutenant Commander Yujin from the tactical station. "Multiple targets locking onto our position." "Adaptive armor respond," Bioram ordered. The ship's hull began to change as the plasma bolts approached. Sections that would absorb energy rotated to face the incoming fire. Areas designed to deflect particle beams moved to optimal positions. The mismatched plating that the aliens had mocked was actually the most sophisticated defensive system ever created. The alien plasma bolts struck the Perseverance and were absorbed harmlessly. The energy was channeled through the ship's hull into storage cells that fed power back to the weapon systems. Each enemy attack made the human ship stronger. "Impossible," Captain Zethkal whispered as he watched his fleet's weapons fire being turned against them. "How are they doing this?" His science officer was frantically analyzing the human ship's energy signatures. "Sir, their hull appears to be some form of programmable matter. It's changing configuration faster than our computers can track." Meanwhile, throughout the solar system, the rest of humanity's hidden fleet was revealing itself. The mining ship Determination had completed her transformation from ore processor to warship. Her massive magnetic accelerators, originally designed to launch refined metals toward Earth, were now hurling projectiles at alien ships. Commander Dalsu coordinated the mining ship's attack from her bridge deep inside the converted asteroid. Target the cruiser formation at bearing 27 Mark 4. Full salvo. The Determination's weapons were crude compared to the Perseverance's exotic arsenal, but they were devastatingly effective. The magnetic accelerators launched chunks of processed metal at tremendous velocity. Each projectile carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The alien cruisers tried to evade, but the mining ship's targeting systems had been designed to track fast-moving asteroids. Spaceships were much easier targets. The metal slugs struck with perfect accuracy, punching through shields and armor like paper. Direct hits on all targets, reported the weapons officer. Enemy cruisers are breaking apart. In another part of the battle, the cargo hauler Resilience was demonstrating why humanity had survived and thrived in a galaxy full of hostile species. Her cargo bays opened to reveal not trade goods, but squadrons of fighter craft unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. The human fighters were small, fast, and nearly invisible to enemy sensors. They moved through space like schools of metallic fish, their formations shifting and changing in patterns that confused alien targeting computers. Fighter squadrons away, reported the Resilience's flight commander. Beginning attack runs on enemy destroyers. The alien point defense systems tried to stop the incoming fighters, but the human craft were too small and too fast. They slipped through the defensive fire like shadows, striking critical systems with precision weapons. Each fighter carried experimental warheads, developed in the laboratories hidden throughout the solar system. Some created localized electromagnetic pulses that fried alien electronics. Others generated micro-black holes that collapsed after milliseconds, but not before tearing holes in enemy hulls. Captain Zethkal watched his fleet disintegrating around him and finally understood the terrible truth. The humans hadn't been lucky to achieve spaceflight with primitive technology. They had deliberately hidden their true capabilities for decades, studying their enemies while appearing weak and helpless. All ships, prepare for retreat, he ordered. We need to warn the Empire about what we're facing here. But even retreat was denied to him. The research vessel Innovation, still disguised as a harmless science ship, had been positioning herself throughout the battle. Now she revealed her true purpose, not to study cosmic radiation, but to manipulate it. The ship's exotic matter laboratories generated a field that disrupted faster-than-light travel. Any ship trying to enter hyperspace would find their jump drives simply refusing to function. The entire alien fleet was trapped in the solar system with an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for 15 years. Hyperspace drives are offline, reported Zethkal's navigation officer. Something is interfering with our jump systems. Then we fight to the death, Zethkal said grimly. Signal all ships. Concentrate all remaining firepower on the human flagship. If we're going to die, we'll take them with us. But humanity had one more surprise waiting for the alien fleet. The Perseverance had been holding back her most powerful weapon, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it. Chief Weapons Officer Dongwu activated the ship's gravity cannon, a weapon that had taken 10 years and the resources of 3 planets to develop. Gravity cannon charged and ready, he reported. Targeting the enemy fleet's center of mass, the weapon fired a beam of twisted spacetime that reached across millions of kilometers in an instant. Where it touched the alien ships, the fundamental forces of the universe went haywire. Gravity pulled in impossible directions. Time flowed at different rates in different parts of each ship. The remaining alien vessels were torn apart not by explosions, but by the fabric of reality itself rebelling against their existence. They came apart like toys in the hands of an angry god, their crews experiencing death in ways that physics textbooks said were impossible. The Kethmoran Empire's greatest fleet was being destroyed by weapons they had never imagined. Tactics. they couldn't understand, and an enemy they had completely underestimated, the humans were winning. The gravity cannon's devastating beam swept through the alien fleet like the hand of an angry god. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were torn apart by forces that shouldn't exist. The Vengeance, Captain Zethkal's flagship, found herself caught in a pocket where time moved at different speeds on different decks. "Engineering reports are impossible," his communications officer announced with obvious confusion. "They say it's been 3 hours since the weapon fired, but our chronometers show only 30 seconds. Zethkal tried to comprehend what was happening to his ship, but human physics was beyond anything the Kethmoran Empire had ever encountered. Sections of his vessel were aging years and minutes, while other areas seemed frozen in time. Admiral Yun Ho watched the destruction from the bridge of the Perseverance with no satisfaction, only grim determination. Each alien ship destroyed meant thousands of enemy warriors who would never threaten Earth again, but he took no pleasure in the slaughter. "Status of the alien fleet," he requested. 60% casualties and rising," reported Lieutenant Commander Eugene. "The remaining ships are scattered and attempting to regroup. Their command structure appears to be completely broken." "And our hidden assets?" Lieutenant Na Young checked her displays, which showed the positions of every human ship in the solar system. All vessels performing as expected. The determination has eliminated the enemy's left flank. The Resilience and our fighters are mopping up the destroyers. The Innovation is maintaining the hyperspace interdiction field. But Admiral Yun Ho knew the battle was far from over. The aliens still had more than 80 ships remaining, and desperate enemies were often the most dangerous. The Kethmoran Empire hadn't conquered half the galaxy by giving up easily. Captain Zethkal was learning this lesson the hard way. Despite the impossible damage to his ship, he was still trying to fight back. The Vengeance limped through space, with half her systems malfunctioning, but her weapons were still functional. "All remaining ships form on my position," he broadcast to what was left of his fleet. "We will concentrate our firepower and break through their defenses." It was a desperate plan, but it was all he had left. The alien ships began moving toward the Vengeance, their formations ragged and their movements unsteady. Many had suffered damage from the human weapons they couldn't understand or defend against. Chief Engineer Bo detected the enemy regrouping and smiled grimly. "They're making it easy for us," she announced. "All remaining alien ships are clustering together." "Perfect," replied Captain Heijin. "Signal the fleet, time to reveal our full strength." Throughout the solar system, ships that had maintained their civilian disguises began their final transformations. But these weren't the major combatants the aliens had already discovered. These were the vessels that humanity had kept completely hidden. From behind the moon came the heavy cruiser Indomitable, her hull painted to look like a disabled freighter that had been drifting in space for months. Her weapon systems came online. As her disguised armor plating fell away to reveal missile launchers and particle beam arrays near the orbit of Mars, what appeared to be a routine patrol craft suddenly revealed itself as the destroyer Relentless. Her hull sections rotated to expose weapon ports that had been carefully hidden behind false panels, designed to look like maintenance hatches. Even more shocking was the emergence of ships from hiding places the aliens had never suspected, asteroid. Mining operations revealed themselves to be mobile battle platforms. Communication satellites deployed weapons that had been disguised as sensor arrays. Even some of the orbital debris around Earth turned out to be dormant war machines waiting for activation. "How many ships do they have?" Captain Zethkal demanded as his sensors detected more and more human vessels appearing on his screens. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied. "Our initial intelligence suggested they had perhaps a dozen armed vessels. We now count over 70 active combat ships, with more appearing every minute." The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this war since the first Kethmoran scout had been detected 15 years earlier. Every cargo run to the outer planets had carried hidden weapons. Every civilian space station had been built with concealed military capabilities. Every mining operation had been designed to double as a fortress. Commander Min coordinated the final assault from his position aboard the Perseverance. The aliens were trapped in the center of the solar system with human forces surrounding them on all sides. Every escape route was blocked by ships they had never detected. Phase 3 deployment complete, he reported. All hidden assets are in position. Enemy fleet is completely surrounded. The alien ships found themselves caught in a sphere of human vessels, each one armed with weapons that defied their understanding of technology. The mining ships fired magnetic accelerators that launched asteroids at near-light speed. The disguised freighters revealed missile systems that could track targets across millions of kilometers. Even the research vessels had weapons that manipulated gravity and time. Captain Zethkal realized he was facing an enemy that had turned deception into an art form. Every piece of intelligence the Empire had gathered about humanity was wrong. Every assumption about human capabilities was false. They had walked into a trap that had been 15 years in the making. "This is impossible," he said to his remaining officers. "No species has ever hidden military assets on this scale." But humanity had advantages that the Kethmoran Empire couldn't understand. Humans had spent thousands of years fighting wars against each other. They understood the value of deception, the importance of intelligence, and the power of making enemies underestimate them. Lieutenant So Young intercepted alien communications as the remaining enemy ships tried to coordinate their response. "They're trying to break out toward the outer system," she reported. "Their plan is to reach the edge of the interdiction field and escape to hyperspace." Anticipated encountered. Admiral Yunho replied, "Signal the outer system assets. Time to close the trap completely." Beyond the orbit of Pluto, where the aliens thought space was empty, more human ships revealed themselves. These were the long-range patrol vessels that had been disguised as deep space research missions. They had been waiting in the darkness for months, their crews living on minimal power to avoid detection. The patrol ship, Vigilant, powered up her engines and moved to intercept the fleeing aliens. Her captain, Commander Minyoung, had been waiting for this moment since she had volunteered for the deep space assignment. "All ships, this is Vigilant," she broadcast on the human tactical frequency. "Outer perimeter is secure. No enemy vessel will escape." The trap was complete. The alien fleet was surrounded by human ships in every direction, trapped in a solar system that had become their graveyard. Every route of escape was blocked by vessels they had never suspected existed, but the humans weren't finished revealing their capabilities. The space around Earth began to shimmer as cloaking fields deactivated to reveal the system's final secret, a network of battle stations that had been completely invisible to alien sensors. These weren't disguised civilian installations. These were purpose-built weapons platforms that had been constructed in secret over the past decade. They hung in space like metallic spiders, their hulls bristling with exotic weapons that could tear apart planets. "Fleet Lord, preserve us," whispered the tactical officer aboard the Vengeance. "They've turned their entire star system into a fortress." Captain Zethkal knew he was defeated, but he was determined to take as many humans with him as possible. "All ships, prepare for ramming speed," he ordered. "If we're going to die, we'll die as warriors." But even this desperate tactic was anticipated. The human ships began moving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully choreographed. They were herding the remaining alien vessels into a specific area of space. Admiral Yunho checked his chronometer and nodded to his weapons officer. "Chief Dongwu, you may fire when ready." The Perseverance had been holding her most powerful weapon in reserve for this moment. Deep in the ship's core, a device that had taken 10 years to build was finally activated. It was humanity's ultimate expression of their understanding that sometimes the only way to achieve peace was to be more terrifying than your enemies. The weapon fired, and space itself seemed to scream. The weapon that humanity had spent 10 years building fired with the force of a collapsing star. But this wasn't a conventional weapon that destroyed matter or energy. This was something far more terrifying, a device that reached into the quantum foundation of reality and rewrote the rules of existence. Where the beam touched the remaining alien ships, Their atomic structure began to change. The exotic materials that made their hulls stronger than diamond became brittle as glass. The energy fields that powered their shields turned into ordinary electromagnetic radiation that dispersed harmlessly into space. Captain Zethkal watched in horror as his flagship began to come apart around him. The metal walls that had protected him through a dozen battles were crumbling like sand. The energy conduits that carried power throughout the ship were reverting to simple copper wire. "What's happening to us?" he demanded, though his voice was barely audible through the failing life support systems. "The humans," his science officer gasped. "They're changing the fundamental constants of physics around our ships. Our technology can't function when the rules of reality are different." It was humanity's ultimate answer to alien technological superiority. If they couldn't match the Empire's advanced materials and energy systems, they would simply make those materials and systems stop working. The quantum field manipulator turned sophisticated alien technology into primitive matter that obeyed different physical laws. Commander J-Min led a boarding party toward the crippled alien flagship. His Marines wore powered armor that looked crude and bulky compared to alien equipment, but appearances were deceiving. The human armor incorporated nanotechnology that could adapt to any environment and weapons that could penetrate any defense. "Remember, we need prisoners," he announced to his team as their assault shuttle approached the dying alien ship. "Hi? Command wants to interrogate their officers about Imperial fleet movements." The boarding action was brief and decisive. The alien crew, their weapons and armor reduced to useless metal by the quantum field, could offer little resistance. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves helpless against humans in suits that looked like they were built from scrap metal. Engineer Biorem monitored the boarding operation from the Perseverance, her sensors tracking every member of the assault team. The quantum field effect was localized and temporary, designed to disable alien technology without permanently damaging the fabric of spacetime. "Boarding successful," she reported to Captain Heijin. "Commander J-Min has secured the alien command section. Casualty reports show minimal human losses. Throughout the solar system, the remaining alien ships were surrendering or being destroyed. The vessels that had seemed invincible hours earlier were now helpless hulks drifting through space. Their crews, trained from birth to believe in Kethmoran superiority, could barely comprehend what was happening to them. The cargo hauler Resilience moved alongside a disabled alien destroyer, her crew preparing to take prisoners. Captain Yuna had trained for this moment, knowing that captured aliens would provide valuable intelligence about the Empire's plans. "This is the human vessel Resilience," she broadcast on standard communication frequencies. "You are defeated. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated according to the laws of war." The alien captain, his ship powerless and his weapons offline, had no choice but to comply. "We surrender," came the bitter reply. "You have won this battle, but the Empire will send fleets that will turn your world to ash." "Maybe," Captain Yuna replied calmly, "but you won't be there to see it." The battle was ending, but Admiral Yunho knew that the war was just beginning. The destruction of an entire Kethmoran battle fleet would send shockwaves throughout the Empire. They would return with larger forces and more advanced weapons. "Casualty report," he requested from his staff. "Minimal human losses, Lieutenant." Commander Yujin replied. 3 ships damaged, no vessels destroyed. Total crew casualties are less than 50. And the aliens, complete destruction of their fleet. Approximately 40,000 enemy casualties. We have maybe 300 prisoners from the ships we boarded before they were completely disabled. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had destroyed a force that could have conquered most civilizations, and they had done it with losses that barely registered. The deception had been perfect, the trap absolute, and the execution flawless. Chief Weapons Officer Dongwu was already analyzing the effectiveness of their exotic weapons. "The quantum field manipulator worked exactly as designed," he reported. "We can disable any technology based on standard physics." Their ships became helpless the moment we changed the rules they were built to follow. But the real victory went deeper than just superior weapons. Lieutenant Na Young had been monitoring alien communications throughout the battle, and what she heard proved that humanity had achieved something unprecedented. "The prisoners are talking," she announced. "They can't understand how we hid our capabilities so completely. They're calling it impossible that any species could maintain such extensive deception for so many years." The truth was that humans had advantages the Kethmoran Empire couldn't comprehend. Humanity had spent millennia fighting wars against opponents who were often technologically equal or superior. They had learned to win through intelligence, deception, and adaptation rather than brute force. Engineer Dalsu aboard the mining ship. Determination was already planning the next phase of operations. The battle had generated massive amounts of debris that needed to be processed and analyzed. Every piece of alien technology would be studied and reverse engineered. "We're looking at decades of technological advancement," she reported to Fleet Command. "Their quantum processors alone are 50 years ahead of our current systems. When we understand how they work, we can build better versions." This was humanity's other great advantage, the ability to learn from their enemies and improve upon everything they captured. The alien ships that had come to conquer Earth would instead become the foundation for humanity's own technological revolution. Captain Heijin walked through the corridors of the captured alien flagship, observing the prisoners being processed by his security teams. The Kethmoran warriors looked defeated and confused, unable to understand how their superior civilization had been so completely outmaneuvered. "You fought well," he told Captain Zethkal, who was being held in the ship's medical bay. "Your tactics were sound and your courage was admirable. But you made one critical error." "What error?" Zethkal asked bitterly. "You assumed that because we looked primitive, we actually were primitive," Heijin replied. "You never considered that we might be hiding our true capabilities." The alien captain stared at him with something approaching respect. "How long have you been planning this?" 15 years, Heijin answered honestly. "Since the first time your scouts entered our space, we knew this day would come, and we prepared for it." The implications were staggering. For 15 years, humanity had been playing the role of a weak, primitive species while secretly building the most advanced military force in known space. They had turned their apparent weakness into their greatest strength. General Taehayan coordinated the cleanup operations from his command center on Earth. The orbital space around the planet was filled with debris from destroyed alien ships, but mixed among the wreckage were technological treasures that would advance human science by centuries. "Begin salvage operations," he ordered. "Every piece of alien technology is to be recovered and analyzed. This battle has given us the tools. We need to defend ourselves against whatever the Empire sends next." The first battle was over, but everyone knew it was just the beginning. The Kethmoran Empire would not ignore the destruction of an entire fleet. They would return with forces that made this battle group look small, but humanity would be ready. They had proven that human ingenuity could triumph over alien technology. They had shown that deception and intelligence could defeat superior firepower. Most importantly, they had sent a message to the galaxy that Earth was no longer defenseless. Admiral Yunho stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, looking out at the debris field that had once been the Empire's unstoppable fleet. Soon, word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would learn that humanity was not the primitive civilization they appeared to be. The war had begun, and humanity intended to win it. 3 days after the battle, only 7 ships from the mighty Kethmoran fleet remained intact enough to carry survivors. These vessels limped away from Earth's solar system like wounded animals, their crews traumatized by a defeat that shouldn't have been possible. High Commander Veltharus sat in the medical bay of the escort ship Survivor, his forearms wrapped in synthetic bandages. Burns covered half his body from when his flagship's bridge had exploded around him. But his physical wounds were nothing compared to the damage to his pride and understanding of the universe. "How many ships escaped?" he asked the medical officer, tending his injuries. 7, Commander, out of 200. The humans allowed us to leave. They could have destroyed us completely. Velthorus knew the truth of those words. The human weapons had stopped firing the moment the alien fleet was clearly defeated. The primitive scavengers had shown mercy to enemies who had come to enslave them. It was another incomprehensible aspect of human behavior. Captain Heijin stood in the observation deck of the Perseverance, watching the surviving alien ships disappear into hyperspace. Behind him, Admiral Yunho reviewed the final casualty reports with something approaching disbelief. 53 human casualties across the entire fleet, Yunho said quietly. Against a force that should have been able to destroy us without effort. How is that possible? Because we understood them better than they understood us, Heijin replied. We studied their tactics for 15 years. We analyzed every battle they ever fought. We knew exactly how they would attack, and we prepared the perfect counter for every move they could make. The human victory was complete in every sense. Not only had they destroyed the alien fleet, but they had captured enough technology to advance human science by centuries. The engineering teams were already at work reverse engineering alien systems and improving upon them. Chief Engineer Bioram had barely slept since the battle ended. Her teams were processing alien technology faster than they could catalog it. The quantum processors alone will revolutionize our computing capabilities, she reported to the senior staff. And their power generation systems are so efficient we can build ships half the size with twice the capability. But the greatest prize was the information they had extracted from captured alien databases. Lieutenant So Young had broken their encryption systems and gained access to Imperial military records dating back centuries. The Kethmoran Empire controls over 3,000 star systems, she reported during the intelligence briefing. But their military is spread thin across their territory. They rely on reputation and technological superiority to maintain control. What about their response to this defeat? Asked Commander Jamin. That's where it gets interesting. So Young continued. Their military doctrine assumes that overwhelming force will always succeed. They have no contingency plans for losing an entire fleet to a supposedly primitive enemy. Admiral Yunho studied the strategic implications. The Empire's strength was also its weakness. They had grown overconfident after centuries of easy victories. They couldn't adapt quickly to an enemy that fought using completely different principles. How? Long before they send another fleet? He asked. At least 6 months, replied General Taehyun, who had been coordinating with intelligence services across human space. Maybe longer. They'll need time to process what happened here and decide how to respond. 6 months would be enough time for humanity to prepare. The captured alien technology would be integrated into human ships. The tactics that had worked so well would be refined and improved. Most importantly, the network of hidden defenses would be expanded throughout human space. Captain Zethkal sat in his cell aboard the Perseverance, still trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The humans had offered him comfortable quarters and excellent medical care. They had even allowed him to send messages to his family in the Empire. It was not how he had expected to be treated by a primitive species. Captain Heijin visited him regularly, partly for interrogation, but mostly out of genuine curiosity about alien perspectives. The conversations had become almost friendly as the days passed. Your species confuses me, Zethkal admitted during one of their talks. You fight like demons when threatened, but you treat defeated enemies with kindness. How do you reconcile such contradictions? It's not a contradiction, Heijin explained. We fight fiercely to protect what we love, but we don't enjoy causing suffering. Once you are no longer a threat, there was no reason to be cruel. The Empire will return? Zethkal warned. This defeat will not be ignored. They will send fleets that make our force look like a scouting party. We know, Heijin replied calmly. We're counting on it. The human captain's confidence was unshakable. Zethkal realized that the defeat of the Imperial fleet was not humanity's greatest victory. It was just their opening move in a larger game. High Commander, Velthorus reached Imperial space after a journey that felt like a lifetime. The debriefing sessions at fleet headquarters were torture worse than any physical injury. He had to explain how the Empire's most powerful fleet had been destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as harmless. "You're telling us that the humans had been hiding their true capabilities for 15 years?" demanded Fleet Admiral Korthik, the Empire's supreme military commander. "That's correct, sir. Every piece of intelligence we had about their technology was deliberately falsified. They made us see exactly what they wanted us to see." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Empire's expansion had relied on accurate intelligence about potential enemies. If they couldn't trust their own assessment of alien capabilities, how could they plan future conquests? "What are your recommendations?" the Fleet Admiral asked. Veltharus had spent the entire journey considering that question. "We need to completely revise our understanding of human capabilities. They possess weapons technology that's at least equal to ours, possibly superior. Their strategic thinking is unlike anything we've encountered. And their weaknesses? Unknown. Sir, everything we thought we knew about human weaknesses was part of their deception." Meanwhile, on Earth, the transformation was accelerating. The ramshackle appearance of human ships was being abandoned now that the secret was out. The Perseverance shed her disguised hull plating to reveal the sleek, deadly warship underneath. Engineer Dalsu supervised the construction of new vessels incorporating both human ingenuity and captured alien technology. These ships would be faster, more powerful, and more versatile than anything the galaxy had seen before. "We're not just building better ships," she explained to her design team. "We're creating an entirely new class of warship. Something that combines our adaptability with their advanced systems." The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something important to themselves and the galaxy. They had shown that technological superiority wasn't everything. Intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to think differently could overcome even the most advanced weapons. Admiral Yunho stood before the assembled fleet commanders, both in person and via quantum communication, from across human space. The victory had given them confidence, but he knew that the real challenge was just beginning. "The Empire will return," he announced. "They'll come with larger fleets and better preparation. But they'll still be fighting the last war while we prepare for the next one." He gestured to the holographic display showing human space. "We have 6 months to turn every human world into a fortress. Every ship into a weapon, every citizen into a defender. When they return, they'll find that this entire region of space has become hostile territory." The plan was ambitious beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. But they had advantages that the Empire couldn't match. They understood that war was about more than just weapons and ships. It was about will, intelligence, and the refusal to accept defeat. Captain Heijin prepared to take the Perseverance on her next mission, a journey to the edge of Imperial space to gather intelligence and spread word of humanity's capabilities. Other species needed to know that resistance to the Empire was possible. "We're not just fighting for Earth," he told his crew as they prepared to depart. "We're fighting for every species that's ever been conquered by the Empire. We're showing the galaxy that bullies can be defeated if you're smart enough and brave enough to fight back." The ship that had once looked like a collection of scrap metal now gleamed with purpose. Her weapons were charged, her crew was ready, and her mission was clear. Humanity would take the fight to the Empire, using the same tactics that had won. The first battle. As the Perseverance jumped to hyperspace, she carried with her the hopes of every species that had ever dreamed of freedom from Imperial rule. The war had begun, and humanity intended to finish it. The Kethmoran Empire had mocked Earth's scrap ship. They had learned too late that appearances could be deceiving, that human ingenuity was more dangerous than any weapon, and that the species they had dismissed as primitive was actually the most dangerous enemy they had ever faced. The galaxy would never be the same.